So now we're going to move to our expert developer panel. I can give a quick introductions, and then I can let them say a little bit more about themselves. So we have Nikki Anderson from the Michaels organization. Say that again?
Can they stand up?
Can they stand up?
Oh, sure, they can stand up. I think the format of this is that they're each going to provide some initial comments to what they heard, to some of your questions, to some of the proposals they researched. We gave them this information in advance. And then you guys can ask them questions. So we'll just make sure to repeat the questions before, so that everyone can hear what's going on. So why don't I actually just let them stand up and introduce themselves and give a little bit of their background. But we really try to diversify this panel, so you have some affordable and market rate housing expertise, affordable housing expertise, and Todd here specializes in retail and commercial development. So we'll move to those helpers.
Hi, my name is Todd Cabanban. I'm with the firm of Cabanban, Rubin, and Mayberry. We are commercial retail real estate brokers. We represent tenants such as General Nutrition Centers, Advanced Auto, Dollar Tree, Noodles and Company, Panda Express, to name a few. We also do project leasing, and also we've done some development as well, notably in the Beverly market at 95th and Western. And we've helped a number of different developers, whether it's at Roosevelt and Ashland in the Illinois Medical District, or we helped University of Chicago with the what was the Co-op Shopping Center, which is now Treasure Island. So we've done a lot of work throughout the city.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Anderson, and I am the Vice President of Real Estate Development with the Michaels Development Company. We're about a 42-year-old affordable housing developer. We are headquartered in the Philadelphia area, Marlton, New Jersey, but we've been working in the Chicago area for the past approximately 12 years, primarily working on the redevelopment of former public housing sites. So we are specializing in Code 6 and market rate housing, Code 6 and affordable housing. Again, we work in about 33 states and have about 55,000 affordable housing units developed over the past 4 years. And so we've done about $3.5 billion worth of development.
Hi, my name is Sarah Wick. I'm a project manager with Related Midwest. My background is actually almost exclusively in affordable housing, but I'm here to sort of represent how a market rate developer might look at this. Related Midwest, over the past year, has opened up 2 500-unit luxury development buildings in the Loop, downtown Chicago. But we also do a significant amount of work in affordable housing. We have 2 plan for transformation deals, such as the Michaels organization. And we also acquire and renovate affordable properties.
So if you guys don't mind, would you be able to provide some of your initial thoughts about some of the ideas that were presented and some of the opinions that the community members provided?
And I'll go ahead and stand. I think part of my reputation a little bit is to bring a little bit of realism to all of this. And I know that a lot of the scenarios that we talked about were based upon what you're calling 4% tax credit deals or tax credit bonds. And there's a real reason why those are not competitive. And it's because they take a lot of subsidy in order to do them. And so I want to sort of echo that, and as we think about how we develop and what we develop, and again, knowing that 9% tax credit, they are really competitive, that is true. And the city at this point, has lost some, those tax credits are based upon the number of people that you have in the city, and so we've lost a little bit of, lost some residents, and so there's not a lot of 9% to go around, both at the city level and at the state level. So I understand the need to try to look at tax and bonds and the 4% credits. But again, they do require quite a bit of subsidy, either in TIF or some other sorts of funding. The other thing that is interesting are sort of all of the different uses and, finding developers or development partnerships to be able to put together to pull these sorts of things off, because it's not often that you would find one developer who sort of specializes in affordable housing and also is really good at retail and also knows what to do with nonprofit space and has operated a lot of open space. And so also keeping that in mind when you talk about issuing an RFP or how to develop. I won't talk too much because I can do this all night, but I will.
So I have a bunch of comments, but one thing that I noticed. So my first comment is it's clear that affordable housing is definitely the direction that the community is pursuing. Some element of it.
That's not true.
It seems to me that we need to be thinking about density because I think that's going to make it more feasible. What are my other comments? I echo Nikki's comment that I think it's a 9% deal versus a 4% deal. So the other thing I would say is that the regrading the street or redirecting the street is likely not going to be appealing to a developer because I imagine the city would put that cost back on them and that's adding costs. And for any market rate development that you're doing, the structure is a little bit different. It's not just about covering your cost. You're outraising equity and you're underwriting debt. So you're underwriting debt to the rents that you can get, but then you're also attracting investors to come in and invest in it. It's a shorter long-term investment. And so you're similar to an affordable housing developer, sort of very conscious of your costs. And if those costs go up because you have to redirect a street, we have to show it on the back end that you can find returns from that. So that may mean adding some more height or creating larger density or increasing rents that the neighborhood may not be able to support. So that's one. The other thing I wanted to say was that the site is clearly very attractive, and the fact that it's city-owned land, which sounds like it's not free, but maybe it's a low cost, that certainly will be attractive to a developer and potentially a market rate developer. And I think for a market rate developer coming in, again, they're probably going to want to push density on that site to help attract the returns that they need in order to do the project.
I'll just talk about just retail in general, because none of the scenarios really had a lot of it. I think there was one, the first scenario, maybe had 24,000 square feet, but it was, I think, more of a farmer's market, interior farmer's market. I think, the intersection there is a great retail intersection. So you've got that. You've got all the elements that retailers and retail developers are looking for. You've got the traffic from the streets. You've got the public transportation. You've got the city densities. You've got retail synergy. So I think, to me, this seems like a very, very important retail intersection. There's a lot of things that are happening along Milwaukee. I think a notable project is the Mega Mall project. I think that, along with this intersection, could really maybe change some things that you might want to see. And I think it might be a market rate mechanism to get you the affordable housing that you're probably looking for. Because I believe that property for commercial and retail is market rate. I think that the rents that some of the newer construction projects along Milwaukee Avenue are asking for are in the neighborhood of $30 to $35 a square foot. Now that's significant. So if you take that 10,000 square foot building, and let's just be conservative, call it $20 a square foot, that's $200,000 potential income for 10,000 square feet. You increase the size of the retail, that's 400,000 that goes towards maybe closing that gap a little bit for the affordable housing. So I would really look at that as maybe the trade-off of having more retail along Milwaukee in order to get the residential projects that you guys are considering.
The other thing I wanted to add is that it seems to me that the community doesn't have an emphasis on parking, and I think that that's really encouraging and will be attractive to both an affordable developer and a market rate developer.
So all three of you pointed out issues of density and scale, and I was wondering if we could just go back through and you could describe a little more, Sarah, in your case, why you think density is necessary for the site, particularly for a market rate project, especially considering it's a large site, 67,000 square feet, a market price of about $6 million. In Nikki's case, what would a project need to be to receive affordable housing subsidies? How big would it have to be? Any thoughts? And in terms of retail, how big does retail need to be on a street like Milwaukee? What's the demand out there for retail?
Putting my market rate hat developer on, a developer wants to build as tall as we can go, right? I mean, that's the bad thing about us. And the higher we build, the more rents we can secure, because it costs us a lot less as we get taller. It costs us a lot more once we're going sort of the other way. You know, you have the foundation and your roof costs are going to be the biggest expense you have, but every floor I can build on top of that increases my rents, and that allows me to increase the returns I can give to that investor. So it makes my job a lot easier to attract people to invest in that site.
And I think from an affordable housing perspective, it's a little bit different. It really isn't about building as many units as you can, because it's not even largely, it really is driven by the availability of low-income housing tax credits, because that is the primary financing mechanism for doing affordable housing units. And so those funds aren't unlimited. And so really, right now, there's kind of what we call a sweet spot now, where sort of IDA and the city are sort of liking to see deals in terms of the number of tax credits that they are willing to issue to a single developer. And right now, we're seeing that sweet spot somewhere around between 70, 80 units, which in most instances would probably take around $1 million to $2 million in tax credits. To put that in some perspective, the city right now, from what I understand, only has to allocate about $6 million annually per year. So you could imagine trying to, spread that across the numbers of developers who are trying to do affordable housing. And so that leaves, 5 or 6 deals a year, and we know that the need is so much greater than that. So, like I said, unlike a market rate project or an affordable project, again, the sweet spot you would be looking for is probably somewhere around 70 units.
In terms of the amount of retail, I think, the frontage along Milwaukee is very important. I saw one of the scenarios that showed residential on the Milwaukee frontage. I personally think that would be, you're not maximizing the benefit of that frontage. In terms of another thing that I saw in some of the scenarios was just gearing the retail towards the public transportation. I personally would think that that might be a mistake. And one of the projects I think of is one in Rogers Park in Howard and Clark, where they really built a lot of retail focused only to the buses and to the trains. Well, that retail has been vacant since the project was built. And the retail that has succeeded is the convenience-oriented retail that has parking for folks that are other than just the commuters coming to do shopping. And I think if you can add parking to whatever project that you're thinking about here, I think you're going to maximize your rental rates. I think some of the storefront stuff along Milwaukee probably trades in the $14, $15, $16 square foot range. And I think the reason some of these newer projects are able to garner the types of rents that they're looking for is because they have the convenience of the parking for their retailers.
Okay, so we're now going to open up to questions. I know there's a lot of people out there who would like to say something. Make sure that you ask a question rather than just stand on a soapbox, right? It's really important that we all, a part of this is a conversation. So any question you ask, you can address it to the developers, to Alderman Cologne, or to us. So let's begin. I see it in the back.
Thank you. Todd, is that the retail man? Todd, is it possible that a Trader Joe's would, in building parking, on-site parking, would that fit on that parcel?
From a size standpoint, yes. From a practical standpoint, probably not. Trader Joe's likes to follow Whole Foods. Basically, if Whole Foods is there, yeah, I want to be there too. If you don't have that type of catalyst or that type of anchor, they're most likely not going to go there.
I had a clarifying point and then a question. First of all, I think it was stated earlier that the TIF money available in this area is around $3 million. As of the most recent report I was looking at on one was $23 million added to Fullerton, Milwaukee TIF. So it seems like there's a lot more there than maybe I'm getting some numbers wrong, but then my question for the housing folks. So there's been a lot of talk about this 9% credit, right? Do you think that it would make a difference in the likelihood of this project securing that kind of funding if the aldermen and the state representative from that area were very vocally in favor of such a project?
Okay, so the first clarifying question was just, the question was, the TIF district appears to have around $20 million in the fund, but I said there would only be about $2.7 million available in 2015. The explanation for that is that most of the TIF funds have already been allocated to specific projects that receive annual allocations. For example, the theater down in Milwaukee, it receives funding from the TIF every year, and that's included in the $20 million. So there's about $2.7 million left extra. So, Nikki?
Yeah, I think the question that you're asking is essentially if an alderman is vehemently supportive of a project, does it make it more likely that that project would be funded? And I think that answer is no, not really. I mean, there is a qualified allocation plan. Now, it is important that you get the alderman's, support, and that comes in the form of a letter. But at the end of the day, there's a qualified allocation plan that you have to submit the necessary information, and it's up to whether it is the city of Chicago or in the instance of the state for them to review that application on its merits.
One other thing just about the TIF is that there is an opportunity to do a TIF deal just on that PIN number. Right now, that property is leveraging zero revenue as it sits right now. There is a possibility to leverage some TIF funds on that PIN, because even if we build one unit, it's going to be 100% improvement than the units that are there now, and what it's generating now. So the land itself has value, and we can borrow against the future of that particular site, because right now there's nothing happening there.
I sort of want to ask a question, and I sort of want to get on the soapbox, but not necessarily want to respect. I would like MPC and perhaps the alderman to talk about the process, because there are references in the document to somehow this process relating to whatever the criteria or standards are going to be 2 or more years from now, whenever there's a real development request for proposals. And I think that it's important to try to clarify that. I said to the alderman, I wish that this were the end of phase 1 and that there were at least 2 more community meetings scheduled, because there's been a tremendous amount of information VDOT comes up with is gonna make a great deal of difference. There's more to understand about what kind of retail can work here, what kind of heights we can tolerate. So, is there another phase? How can we proceed? Do we just have to shut up and wait?
All right, Alderman Cohen, would you like to address that question?
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to have this particular meeting was to be able to take these concepts and to pass it off on developers who are interested in this particular site so that they can come up with proposals based on the guidelines that the community has set. And these scenarios, to me, are guidelines. How you guys have voted on these scenarios are also guidelines. You know, how much density you can take, how much affordability you can take, how much market rate you want, how much retail you want, how much open space that you're proposing, all of this stuff, and you know what the experts here had to say is very true. They were very nice about it, but you know, I think what we heard basically is that, oh, you want all this green space, but if you want to make this project work, you're going to have to add some more either retail or more residential. You heard like, oh, this affordable deal is not going to work. You may have to add some market rate in order to make your numbers work. Everything is a give and take with these different scenarios, and there's cost factors involved in order to make any of these scenarios work. My game plan is once we take all of this feedback and put it in the form of a request for proposals and just put it out there in the market, depending on what comes back, how many different proposals come back, then we can reconvene again, and I can come to you and say, you know what, I've got 5 people that are interested in doing X, Y, Z. What do you think of these proposals for these particular sites? We'll actually have a competitive process that will allow different people, whether it's market rate, whether it's affordable, maybe these two entities join forces and come up with one proposal. I'm not really sure what is going to be out there, but this gives an opportunity for people to see that these are the values of our neighborhood. This is what the neighbors want before you even start to put a pencil on the paper and start to draw and come up with an idea. You already have an idea of what the neighborhood wants. So that's what this process is. And my goal is to be able to get some proposals back to you that are real developers with real investors coming up to you with a real proposal for you to react to. So that's kind of the gist of it. Yes?
I have a question. Are there any developers that appreciate the architecture that Logan Square has and how that location is actually the center and the heart of Logan Square? And my question is basically, is it possible to make something that actually adds to the neighborhood in terms of beauty or architecture, you know, with what we already have, rather than the kind of eyesore that the CTA gave us, you know, which had absolutely nothing to do with anything that was already here?
Well, yeah, let me pass that off to the development team. I think yes, but...
Could you repeat the question?
So the question is, do we as developers think that we can add or capture the beauty that exists in that area architecturally? I mean, I think architecture can be very subjective. It sounds like there will be a zoning process here, right? There would be a zoning process. As part of the zoning process, there's community input on what can be done there from a material standpoint, from a height standpoint. So that's an opportunity for the community to opine on it or to provide your opinion. But I think there's some really exciting architecture that's happening in the community or in our city that, you know, what's challenging is to be able to do it so exact as a historical building, if that's what you like, because it's expensive to build that way now with brick and the ways that we built in the past. It's challenging. So, but it doesn't mean that we can't find something that's great and that fits in and is contextual. But it's a process and it involves engaging with the community. So.
I don't think we should take the approach that we
Yeah, and I will add that it is. I think one of the things that's really important. I can speak for my organization. I think one of the things that we think is really important is to really understand the context of the neighborhood and for the housing that we build to be contextual. That also means finding the right architect. An architect that understands how to do charrettes, an architect that understands how to listen to what you want as opposed to pushing their own agenda about what they think needs to be built. So I think that that's very important, but you have to be forceful in order to do that. But what I will echo is that sometimes it's very hard. For instance, if you're in a neighborhood with a lot of ornate architecture, you've got materials like lots of limestone, lots of terracotta, those things end up being cost prohibitive in the end. Now, what we do, and again, working with our architects, we go out and we find the absolute best comparables to those things. And for instance, in one neighborhood, what we were able to do is salvage material. So we couldn't necessarily recreate a lot of the architecture, but what this particular architect did for us was to go out and actually salvage details that were in the area and incorporate those tiny details into it to make the architecture be seamless with what's in the neighborhood. So I think that you can respect that, but it's very hard to absolutely recreate. And that I do want to make that clear. But you can get close.
All right, sir.
Given overarching traffic flow issues for the city, is the idea of rerouting Kedzie even a possibility? Would the CDOT even agree with that?
Yes.
So we have a representative from CDOT here who was able to answer that question.
Come on down.
Thank you.
I am Bridget Stala. I'm with the Chicago Department of Transportation. I'm the project manager for the traffic study that will be starting shortly. And yes, we have vetted it internally with our traffic engineers and do feel that is possibly an opportunity at this location. But we do want to gather all the information regarding the area, the transit. We will have a public process after we get our initial studies finished, and public input will definitely be part of the equation, as will input from experts like the developers here.
All right, sir?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you all for taking your time volunteering. This is great to see what you guys are working on. I'm struggling a little bit with visioning the need for retail, and I love your guys' opinion. If you were to both look out this window, and hopefully 2 years down Milwaukee, right now you see about 50% of our retail boarded up. Hopefully we'll have more restaurants and shopping there. If that happens, how does that affect the need for the retail that's going in there? Where's our neighborhood position if all of this retail is filled up down Milwaukee here? Do we need more above average, average, under average? I would love your guys' opinion.
Okay, so the question was, given the fact that a lot of the retail in Milwaukee is currently vacant, do we need more retail? And if a new retail space opened, would that be problematic for the existing retail?
Hopefully, sometimes some of the retail vacancies that you see up and down the street aren't necessarily just because of the market and what the need is. Sometimes it's because spaces or old buildings are obsolete. The electricity isn't up to what national retailers or retailers need, or a restaurant might need, in terms of, just power. Some restaurants need 400 amps of service. And some of these old buildings, they don't have that in that space, especially smaller 12 or 1,500 square foot spaces. So sometimes there's that reason for the vacancy. I think that, there is a wide range of rents that I'm seeing and a wide range of different types of retailers on the street. I think that this is a market in transition. I know that Family Dollar took over the old Dearborn Grocery, and they ended up paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $14. Well, that tenant is not gonna be able to survive in a mega mall type project. They just can't afford to rent. So I think you're gonna continually see an evolution of retail and retail uses along the commercial corridor here.
I also just want to add that some of the retail, while it looks empty, it's in play, as they say. Somebody bought it, it's being renovated, they're currently looking for tenants. So some of it, while to the naked eye, it's empty, and you know, I don't see it that way because I know who just bought it and who's renovating it, who pulled out permits, and you know that they're marketing the space. So some of these spaces, like you know, one example is, you know, all of the terracotta buildings that are in the landmark district after the former Goldblatt's Gap building here, those are all being renovated and restored to their initial state, and those storefronts are going to be marketed to new tenants, and so there's properties that are being purchased and being renovated as we speak. A lot of the activity, actually, people are starting to look between Kimball and Central Park for a lot of the new retail, because even though a lot of it's empty, there are people that are interested in coming into these spaces.
All right, we have a winner for persistent hand raising. Sir, right here.
Good evening. Since the developers seem to offer us some consensus that this would be one of the most exciting transit-oriented development opportunities in the Chicago neighborhood, I want to come back and question the assumption that it's in the city's best interest to do a one-time cash out of $5 to $6 million, which is the assumption in all of the scenarios. I would ask whether or not we should be looking at the city's community land trust. It actually has an incorporated land trust that the mayor is appointed to. I believe the executive director, Bickerdine, is on that. And whether or not it isn't a better return to the city to be in a position of controlling the affordability of whatever the end users are and getting a longer-term investment that certainly could be better, more beneficial to the city and to this community than us sending our parking meter dollars to Dubai. So I think there's another financing tool that should be put on the table. This could be the most innovative use of the city's community land trust on that land. Change the whole financing.
That's an interesting idea. Does anybody have any comments about that? We will record that information, absolutely. Sir?
I have a question for Sarah, actually. You had mentioned that it's cheaper to build higher. My understanding was that up to about 4 stories, you're building with wood. After that, you're building with steel and concrete. It's more expensive to a point. So at what height are we talking about in order for it to actually become cheaper to build higher? Because I know 6 stories is much more expensive to build than 4. Just from a dollar very short place.
That's a great question. So his question is, at 4 stories, you're only required to build with a wood frame, and once you go beyond that, you are building with steel and concrete. And wood is a less expensive material than steel and concrete. Excuse me. So the short answer here is that I unfortunately have not had a chance to look at the numbers, but I think my point with this was that no matter what, or not no matter what, my point was that as you begin to explore building higher buildings, the higher they are, the more attractive they become to a developer. I don't know. Sort of a generic answer, sorry.
So unfortunately, we're out of time, but we want to ask one more very important question to all of you to write down on your sheets. Now, you should keep in mind all the information that we've talked about over the course of the night, and keep in mind your own values, okay? So we have 6 answers to this, so you have to pay close attention. So, given limited public subsidy and funding, what is your top priority for this site? Okay? A, affordable housing. B, arts space. C, community or nonprofit designated space. D, indoor farmers market. F, improved green space. G, none, the city should save the money for its budget. So I'll go through that again. The question is, given the limitations on public funding and limited public subsidy, what is your top priority for this site? A, affordable housing. B, arts space. C, community or nonprofit space. D, indoor farmers market. E, improved green space. And F, none, the city should save the money for its budget. All right, so let's do a show of hands really quickly. What?
The first time you said F for green space and E for...
I apologize, let me repeat them, just make sure you have it right, I apologize for that. A, affordable housing. B, arts space. C, community or nonprofit space. D, indoor farmers market. E, improved green space. And F, none, the city should save the money for its budget. Okay, so let's...
Explain that last one.
The last question is simply asking you whether you think this site merits a subsidy versus other potential uses of city subsidies elsewhere in the city, okay?
I'm sorry, I just want to ask this because the way the questions are framed to are a little kind of leading people to act a certain way. So I have to say that we should ask ourselves, why are we allowing for public goods such as public land, public land, to be used for private goods? I haven't seen this in the question.
Okay, so the point was that we should not allow city land to be devoted to private good.
Yes, because we know in the neighborhoods the rents are increasing and private developers are buying lots in the neighborhood.
Okay. Yes, that's a good point. I still think I still think it would be great to answer this question just to get a good sense of, given the limited amount of money that we have, what should we do with it? So let's raise our hands. So, you answered A, affordable housing, top priority. Okay. B, arts space. Okay. C, community or nonprofit space. Okay. D, an indoor farmers market. Okay. E, improved green space. Okay. And F, none, the city should not use subsidies here. Okay, so it looks like the majority of people said affordable housing, but there were also lots of votes for green space. So now I'm going to pass it on to Brienne.
Sure, so I'm actually just going to wrap up this meeting. Just give you a couple
Hey,
notes
one
before we
question
begin
for
with this
transparency.
information. So if you want to take a look again at the 28 scenarios, they're on the back wall. We're going to be distilling all of our expert advice we received and everything else and producing a final report, so stay tuned for that. Please leave your note cards on your seat with your pencil. Feel free to take the packets you received. And we'll be also sending around an online survey, so feel free to forward that to your